I mean, man, we can't do trial by combat anymore, right? So this is kind of our modern way. And my kids all recite this. It's, tough times make strong men make easy times make weak men make tough times. Mm-hmm. And we're in the weak men make tough times.
Welcome back to the podcast. This is take 2. We had some technical failures, but I'm blaming it all on Kyler.
Oh, no.
Yeah, but we've got a fantastic guest with us, my good buddy Paul from the Orion Foundation on Instagram. And Paul, you want to just tell us a little bit about yourself, how people might know you?
Yeah, no, absolutely, man. So like Jim, you mentioned, probably most well known is at the Orion Foundation on Instagram. That's my muzzle-loading, surplus guns, kind of weird weapons and gear.
You're LARPing.
LARPing-ish,
yep.
Yeah. Page that I've been doing for years and years. So that's probably one of the most common things. We also do the Green River Boys together. So that's the way that we handle teaching younger kids. Mm-hmm. It's Green River Boys, but girls are also involved in it as well too. Wilderness skills, survival skills,
like the way cooler
historical.
Boy Scouts.
Yeah, like the way cooler Boy Scouts, yeah. Right? I know we're gonna dive into that a little bit more later. But yeah, so there's that. I got the Green River Boys. I was also on the History Channel a few years back for a show they had called Mountain Men Ultimate Marksman, and that did not turn out to be the TV career that I thought it would be.
You're not a big
unfortunately,
celebrity?
Not a celebrity. Not. I thought for sure I was going to finally get my dream job, which would be the historical weapons advisor for Hollywood. Did not come together. Right.
It's okay. I don't think you'd like modern Hollywood.
True. Yeah. I don't think that. Yeah. Probably wouldn't work out personality-wise. Yeah. There you go, man. There you go. But I did get the byline on that show as a historic arms expert, right? And I'm owning that and using that and referencing that ever since. So that was definitely worthwhile.
You've got your creds now.
Yeah, exactly. Real life, provable creds. Exactly. You can see it on Hulu. So yeah, absolutely. But yeah, that's it, man. Just kind of those are the main things for sure. Wrote a lot for the Backwoodsman magazine. That was another thing I really enjoyed. Loved that magazine probably ever since I was in college. Wrote 20 articles for Backwoodsman, ended up as one of their associate editors, mm-hmm. which, of course, in the modern world, any kind of writing you do in that kind of space pays exactly $0, right?
Big fat donut.
Doing it for the love of the game. Magazine folded kind of permanently, I would say, last year, so that was kind of sad, but really glad to be a part of that as well, too, because I really enjoyed doing that, love writing. In fact, when I was younger, that's what I thought I was going to be,
It's not too late.
It's true. Well, I mean, except for the whole publishing industry is kind of gone now.
Yeah,
but yeah, no, that's kind of it, man. That's kind of my bona fides, I would say.
That's awesome, man. Yeah, you and I have known each other for like 7+ years.
Yeah, I think it's probably more than that, for sure. Yeah, absolutely.
Paul was one of the homeschool dads when I was in middle school and high school, and he kind of took me under his wing, doing a lot of camping and bushcraft and just cool adventures and things.
Yeah. In fact, my wife reached out to me, I remember, and she was like, hey, there's this kid that's really into outdoor stuff, but his family's not really into outdoor stuff, and can he come camp with you guys? Mm-hmm. And I was like, well, it seems kind of odd, but we designated him the camp intern.
Exactly.
And it's been one of the best decisions we ever made. Yep. So
I got to pass that on to somebody at some point.
Yeah. No, that's right. That should be like an honorarium.
Boys.
Yeah.
We'll get like a little placket or something.
We'll have to make you something that's like the camp intern emeritus.
There you go.
It's like for sure.
I like that. Bestow it upon someone.
No, absolutely.
Yep. No, but man, you've been one of the big influences in the bushcraft world for me.
Cool.
And you've been inspiring a lot of other people. And so I've got a few questions for you.
Yeah, absolutely.
I sent them to you so you could come up with some good responses. But the first one is, how did you first get started in the bushcraft and survival world?
Yeah, absolutely.
What really drew you into that?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. So I feel like we have these kind of core experiences that really define things for us, and in a lot of ways, having that experience, you spend kind of the rest of your life coming back to that, trying to recreate that, right? Chasing that high, right? And I feel like for me, one of the core experiences was when I was probably, the lore was always I was 3. I think I was probably a little bit older than that, but like 3, 4-ish years old. Went on this camp out with my dad and his buddies. This would have been, gosh, like 80 or 81, right? So early 80s, and everyone there had black powder guns. And I asked my dad later, I was like, am I misremembering that? Did that, did that go down that way? And he's like, yeah, that was a thing. People in that time period, like, there was a lot of interest in black powder stuff and black powder hunting. Some of that was the bicentennial, from 76. A lot of that was Jeremiah Johnson. And then these would have been the guys that would have grew up watching Davy Crockett and stuff on TV, right? So there was a big interest in, muzzleloaders and that kind of thing. And that was the event I shot my first black powder gun at. And probably my first gun ever, right? And it was a Philadelphia Derringer. Shot that. Actually, I brought one kind of as a demo here. So yeah. So take a look at that. So this is the Philadelphia Derringer, 44 black powder percussion pistol. This is the first gun I ever shot. Not this exact one. My dad still has the one, but this is this is it. Also, remarkably, the gun that killed Lincoln, right? So it would have been the same kind of pistol. But yeah, so went on that camp, shot that gun. We worked on, I remember making spears with my dad, making fires, cooking over fire, everything, and it was great. And I was like, yeah, this is it, and kind of I feel like a lot of it's been just trying to get back to that moment, right? Later on, did a lot of camping with friends. I was kind of the camping guide in high school. As soon as I got my license, was camping by myself, taking people camping, doing that kind of thing. And then, college days, really got into playing paintball, more of what we would call woods ball back then, which is kind of finding land, playing out in the woods, outlaw ball, I've heard it called that too, because a lot of times you're playing in places where you maybe shouldn't be. But we would do these events, I called them field days, where we would work on like what I think has come to be called like bushcraft type skills, right? And so my grandfather growing up was really into amateur radio, so I was always kind of amateur radio adjacent, and they had events called field days where they would go like off grid and set up comms and set up communications and do tests of their gear. And so I kind of adopted that language. And so every 6 months or so, we would do a field day where we would camp out and, throw knives, use what you or I would call primitive weapons like bows and arrows, that kind of stuff, in a way to kind of expose that group to more of those type of skills, and just called it working on skills, right? Well, flash forward, getting on Instagram, kind of getting involved in that, learned that there was this thing called bushcraft. And I was like, oh my gosh, other people do this stuff. This is so weird that it's not just, it's not just me kind of hoisting this on my friends. There's other people who do this willingly, and really made a lot of neat connections in that way. The other thing that I wanted to bring up is there is a, it's kind of, it's I love talking to people who are younger about this, right? Because in the 80s, dude, there was such a sense that the Soviets were going to invade us, right? Like, so we saw movies like Red Dawn, and we thought that was real. Like, this is going to happen in our lifetime. And so, like, thinking about survival, thinking about who would make it, who wouldn't make it, who would you bring with you, what gear would you have? I mean, walk into middle school, those were our conversations, So that was something. In fact, that's why for the Orion Foundation, I used the Red Dawn picture, is because that was kind of our thing growing up.
I didn't realize that was the connection. I just thought you loved Red Dawn.
Yeah, well, I mean, I do, obviously, right? Yeah. I did the screening and everything out at the place.
Movie.
But
that was a fun time.
But that was a thing that we really grew up with.
Yeah.
And you figure that movie came out in like 84, right? So kind of the height of all that. You had American Survival Guide, you had Soldier of Fortune, you had all these kind of influences on that time where there's things you would see for sale in those magazines, or there was just a very real sense of like, hey, we're going to have this happen in our lifetime. We need to be ready for it. We need to think about it. And so we always kind of had that, I guess, like survival mindset kind of in the back of our heads. Right. So yeah, I'd say it's kind of a mix of those.
That's awesome. I didn't realize that was like sort of the impetus for all this. That's cool.
That's the whole reason. Yeah, when I started the Orion Foundation, that was the reason for that for that logo choice was because that was our biggest influence. Was awesome. Red Dawn and Red Dawn culture is what I used to call that back in the day.
That's so cool. Yeah, man. Well, you've got a whole bunch of stuff on the table, and I'm a gear nut. You somehow outdo me. I didn't think that was possible. You are a huge gear nut. You want to talk about some of the stuff that you've got on here, or is this?
Yeah. No, we can definitely jump into that, man. Yeah. I guess I'll do we'll do this a bit at a time, right? Yeah, but I would say that kind of along the lines of like survival and skills and that kind of stuff. The big thing in the 80s was the hollow handle survival knife, right? So when we saw, and a lot of these movies that I'm talking about, like I never saw these in the theater, right? Because I was too young at the time, right? So you're watching them later on HBO, or you're watching them, late night TV or whatever. And so you see these things, you're like, oh my gosh, I gotta have. I mean, and we're like a consumer society, right, in America. So you're like, oh, I need this object, right? Which is kind of funny to think, like the generations before us, like my grandfather, his dad, like they would have just made do with whatever they had, right? And so one of the things I brought is this hollow handle survival knife from the 80s. This is the Explorer Wilderness, and this is the one my dad had growing up, right?
That's awesome.
And so this knife was kind of like the survival knife, right? Yeah. Kept it in the safe. I could wear it when we were hunting. Didn't always get access to it. But just, but kind of similar of knives of that time period. And a lot of these are based on the Air Force survival knife of the 60s and 70s, and I think they used them up until the 80s. They also called it the bolt knife because it had kind of like a bolt face on the as a hammer, right. A hammer spot on it. But for this blade specifically, it's got the sawback of dubious quality, right? That's there. Usually they're spear points, right? Which is still to this day kind of my favorite blade profile. They have the holes in the handguard to lashing, which we all know, like you never want to like lash your knife to a spear and stick it in something that's going to run off. And then, of course,
I got into the big online fight with that bone survival guy.
No, man.
Oh, maybe I've just talked to Carlos about that.
Yeah. Oh, I'd hope so.
I'll tell you that a little.
Yeah. No, that's awesome.
Yeah.
But yeah, same thing, right? Like, got the hollow handle where you can put in your, your matches and all the things you need to survive. But yeah, man, this was like, for me, like the way that I grew up, this was like a mythical knife. You know what I mean? Which is kind of funny because, like, if you think about it, like. I mean, look at this blade, man. I never used this, right? It's one of those things that had this almost like mythical stature, but like honest field use. It's not nil, right? I'm not going to it. I'm not using it or whatever. So that's kind of a funny thing. And I would say that like the most common knife I actually use would be more like your standard, old hickory butcher knife, mountain man, blade. You're not going to baton this through anything.
Right.
It's not, kind of a no frills knife, but man, this thing's been with me on probably almost every camp I've ever done for the past, 30 years.
I don't think I've ever gone out with you and not seen this.
Yeah.
Or something like.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Exactly. Or in this style, right? For sure, man. But yeah, no, I mean, we can keep going, but this is just, and I'll dive into some of these things. But yeah, I thought this was kind of appropriate for the bushcraft awesome. And survival and that kind of thing for sure.
I have had my fair share of the hollow handle knives.
Yeah, and I'll keep buying them too. Oh, yeah. I'm in love with them, but it's
there's a soft spot in my heart for that.
Absolutely.
There's a few guys that I know that actually make some usable ones.
Yep.
Oh man, I can't remember his name off the top of my head right now.
So there's Martin Knives had one that I thought was pretty usable, and Boker made a copy of that, which again, I actually met Martin at gun shows back in the day before he died, and almost bought a knife from him for however many times, every time, yeah. Right? And then once he died, I was like, oh man, that's the end of that. Oh. But the Boker's a pretty good facsimile of that blade. Of course, like the Chris Reeves are pretty solid, because I think they're one piece and everything.
There's a guy I know that makes hello handle pukus.
Oh, that's actually a great idea.
It's like the best of both worlds.
Yeah.
And I cannot for the life of me remember who he is right now.
As soon as we're done, you'll be like,
exactly,
oh yeah.
It was that guy.
Yeah, for sure.
But I'm a sucker for those.
Well,
I remember like buying my first one at a gun show and paying way too much.
Yeah, right on, man. Well, again, that goes back to the advertised in the back of Soldier Fortune magazine, right? They had the ad with the, the crappy Taiwan hollow handle knife with, water on it, and it looked like you could survive anything. And gosh, that knife, like I think everybody had the black one.
Yep.
But there was a camo version too.
With the ball compass.
Yep, the ball compass. Yep, absolutely. No, for sure, man. So no, that's awesome.
I had the one. They still sell it at Harbor Freight.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Big hollow handle buoy one.
I know exactly what you said. Yeah, Jackson bought that at Harbor Freight. Yeah.
Every time I go in, I'm like, I kind of want to buy it.
Yeah.
Just for giggles.
We should do a weekend where we just use that for survival, right?
That's not a bad idea.
Right? I mean, that'd be a really cool.
Yeah,
like we'll go to Harbor Freight. We'll get a tarp. We'll get that knife, and then there we go, man.
I've been wanting to restart the other YouTube channel. We'll do a video on Harbor Freight survival.
No, that sounds great, man. That's good. I love it. I love it.
That's awesome, man. Well, I know a big thing for you has been reenactment.
Yeah.
And mountain men stuff. And you and I both know a lot of the guys in that, and I'm sure you know way more than I do. But you want to just talk about like what got you into that?
Yeah.
Sure
Oh, absolutely.
Black powder stuff.
Well, yeah. I mean, it was a natural, right?
Yeah.
And it's kind of funny because like my dad, like, as much as I'm a black powder guy, my dad's 10 times the black powder guy that I am, right? And you've met him, and you've been to his talk, that he gives, and I mean, he can talk for 3 hours straight on like primers, right? But he, it's funny because he never, like, I can never imagine him dressing up and doing a reenacting event. Like, he'll attend them, and he's attended events all up the East Coast, but never kind of took it to that level. And he's actually gone to Rendezvous with me a couple times, and it was interesting. Yeah, I think for me, it was kind of that natural extension, So I read Backwoodsman magazine had an article. Again, this kind of goes back to the whole like core experiences, right? So Backwoodsman magazine had an article about a musket for survival, and that was the name of the article. And I played off of that a little bit with one of my articles, the one that was the canoe gun for survival, right? Because it was kind of in the same vein, because I loved that, and it was kind of an homage to that original one. And basically, this guy kind of like paints a scenario where he's like, "Hey, I went." It's like, hey, there's a dude and he's out in the woods and he doesn't have a lot of resources, and he finds, a shack and there's ammo, but it's the wrong ammo for his gun, so he can't really do anything. And then kind of turns that to, if he would have had a musket, he could have melted down the lead and made a ball. He could have used the powder. And there's some like idiosyncrasies there between like smokeless powder and black powder, but just for the sake of like the scenario, it was pretty cool. And that really, for a thought experiment, I love that. And I just thought it was a great article, right? And I thought it was a really cool thing. And at that point, I really wanted to get a flintlock, because I had always, my dad, I think he had one flintlock, and I never had a flintlock. I just had, shot percussion guns, because he mainly was kind of into like the Civil War side of black powder stuff.
Gotcha.
And went out and got, the most authentic gun I could get, which was a Thompson Center Hawken, which is like totally not authentic, right? And around the same time, found the Book of Buckskinning, which is a book that was, I think it was originally written in the 70s about the mountain man hobby, essentially, like, which is called, usually referred to as buckskinning. And in fact, as kind of a, in that same vein, I started a website, probably 2000, maybe 2001, called buckskinning.org, which is
make you feel old?
Yeah.
That website's been around longer than I've been alive.
There you go, man. Awesome. But I had found this book, and it was, and I want to say I found like the first edition.
Right.
So this is literally in the in the 70s, these guys doing this hobby, dressing up like mountain men, shooting black powder guns, camping, cooking over fire. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is that core experience, right? This is the thing. And so synchronous events occur. I got the black powder rifle. I found this book. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is so neat. I wonder if anybody still does this. And at the time, I was living in Austin, and there was a shop called McBride's Gun Shop, which I think just recently closed. Been around forever.
Oh,
and they had a black powder section, and there was on the wall there was this sign that said, "Hey, do you want to be a mountain man?" And we host yearly rendezvous 3 times a year or whatever. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is that thing. So I call the guy up, and he's like, oh yeah, we got to camp next week. And I'm like, well, I can't go next week because I got to get all my stuff together. And so I went using, and this is awesome, and I love this, like, I love kind of telling the story to people who are much more authentic than I was, right? But I went off of that book, and I basically put together what I thought was a legit mountain man impression based on kind of 1970s buckskinner culture, and showed up at this event in May, ready to go, right? And I walked in, loved it, had a great time, you know, did all the rest of the events that year. I don't know that I used a single thing off of that original, you know, set I had, set of gear I had, but
well, half of the fun of stuff like that is going and using other people's gear.
Oh my gosh, man, yeah, for
Seeing
sure.
what they've got.
Yeah. And I, you know, did that. That was kind of my gateway in, you know, going to Rendezvous. I've done a lot of Texas Rev stuff. Like I got involved in a group called the Texian Legacy Association, where, you know, every year for Texas Independence Day, they would shoot a musket volley at the Capitol, and so that was kind of a neat thing to do. And you know, you show up in the paper or whatever.
Right.
And then you know, went out. I've done, you know, Goliad and some of the other events, and it's something that I feel like you, as a Texan, you kind of feel like you kind of have a calling towards this, right? Because I remember one time, like I was at work and this guy was talking to me. He's like, "Well, you say y'all a lot. I mean, is that like, are you really from Texas, or is this like an affectation? You know, you say just to kind of blend in, right?"
Yeah.
And I sent him a picture from the Austin American-Statesman of me and my gear at the Capitol shooting a musket volley, and I said, "This is how Texas I am. How Texas are you, buddy?" And I thought that was great, right? It was a great, like, you know, it's like, what a thing, right? And I would say that, like, when it comes to reenacting, it's very tribal, right? There's different groups, and there's different, like anything, like any type of thing people do, there's idiosyncrasies around what you have to wear and what you have to look like. And I would say that I feel like the groups that do it now are probably a lot more historically accurate than the groups that have done it in the past, but they're a lot more exclusive. And so you look at things like in the 80s and 70s, man, there's like 300 people there.
Right.
And now you may get 20 people that show up, because there's a level of historical accuracy to barrier to entry, and some people don't want to make that barrier to entry. And there's a lot of, I mean, it would be overly simplistic to say like snobbery, but it's something where, you know, and I understand, right? It's like anything else, right? If somebody's really into golf, bro's gonna spend a lot of money on golf clubs. Other bro's gonna have better golf clubs. He's gonna use that as a way to demean. I mean, man, we can't do trial by combat anymore, right? So this is kind of our modern way. And so you kind of have to look beyond that and say, hey, I'm here, you know, because one, a lot of those events are for the public. And that may be, there may be someone in the audience who maybe was kind of like not into history, that in being there and seeing that, they're like, oh man, this is so cool.
Right.
I want to visit this museum. I want to support this thing. Like, not everybody's going to become a reenactor, but I kind of feel like you have to balance that kind of tribalism with the idea that I'm here to do something for other people, so that other people have a good experience, and they take that away from it. Because I've definitely, dude, I've been at events where I've had like almost no interaction with the people there, because they have their clique, they don't want to talk to anybody else, you know, they spent X amount of time on their outfit, your hat's not right, or, you know, this, that, or the other. And I know my history pretty good, right?
From the rest of your gear.
Yeah, for sure, right? And I've had events where I've driven hours to basically be by myself, because they're so elitist and they're so exclusive that they don't even want to say hey to you, right? And in fact, one of the worst events I think I've had was a couple of years ago. I went to Goliad, and my son had, you know, he had such a great time. He was like, so I'm pretty flexible. So I'll say if they need more people in the ranks, I'll be in the ranks. If they need somebody to man a cannon, I can be on the cannon crew, because I actually have a cannon certification that you have to shoot. You have to be checked out to shoot a cannon at a event.
That makes sense,
right? It makes sense, right? It's a big danger, right?
I don't want just Joe Schmo off the side of the
For
road.
sure, right? Well, and I'm also an EMT, so I'm very intent about like safety and stuff. And so I generally, like, I basically say, hey, I'm there for other people, whatever I can do. You know, I even revived somebody at one of those events that went out, right? So all kinds of stuff. So my son has been a powder monkey for, I think, 2 or 3 years, where he comes out and brings the powder, loves it, right? It's a great event. So not this year's event, but last year's event, he comes out and he brought 4 of his friends with him, right? And it's his birthday. He's like, hey, I want to go do this. I want to go to Goliad. We're going to stay in the barracks. We're going to do all this fun stuff. And it was so he gets there, and one of the people that runs it is like, hey, we want you to be this character who's like the person who came out with this woman to like basically stop the battle. So it's a huge honor, right?
Yeah.
Well, then somebody steps in from the Texas Historical Commission and says, no. We can't have anybody who's under the age of 18 on the field. You're not allowed to do that. And it's a kid in history, right? This would have been like a 12-year-old kid. This is not an 18-year-old, right? And a powder monkey would have traditionally been a kid, right? So he's sold these people, and here's this event that you're going to come and get to be a part of this. So I outfitted them with clothes. I drove them all down there, did all the stuff.
Yep.
And it was one of the most unwelcome experiences I feel like I've had. And so for them, I would say that's probably ruined their historical experience, right? And those are the things I try to be leery of, right? Because, this year I was like, hey, you want to go to Goliad again? He's like, yeah, I never want to do that again. He's like, I feel like they don't want us there. I feel like, and that's tough, right?
Yeah.
Because in a lot of ways, they kind of don't want you there. So you kind of have to overcome that and say, hey, I'm going to go do this thing because I feel like, one, I'm a medic. They need to have somebody there to help out with that. 2, I feel like I want to make sure that when we have these events, that the people who come and see it are good and they're having a good experience and they're seeing all this. Right. But man, you really have to kind of balance it with time and effort and whatever, because there's a lot of that's the good and bad of reenacting, right? Is a lot of times you really feel like they don't want you there.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, we need people there.
Yeah,
because
you can't survive without.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you got to have people to have an interest in it, right?
We've talked, and like our buddies in the Green River Boys.
Yeah.
I know at least one person's also in the MMA, and I know there's been a few that have wanted to join, but have just like not felt welcome in the whole thing. And
well, that's it, man. And that's one of those things that it's a real shame. And honestly, that was one of the impetus for starting the Green River Boys, right? Like originally the idea was that that we would have a thing to kind of intro kids into that, right? To get them kind of interested in that. But it's difficult when you almost kind of get the sense that those groups don't necessarily want you to be a part of them,
right,
unless you check this box, check that box. And I tend to look at it as a journey, right? Nobody's perfect. I mean, my God, we live in the modern age. You're not a mountain man.
Yeah, exactly.
I've had guys read me the Riot Act who are accountants. And I'm like, bro, you're not a mountain man.
Yeah.
Like, I'm sorry to tell you. Like, I love your outfit. That gun's gorgeous. But you're not the guy. Yeah. You know what I mean? And neither am I, right? And that's the other thing I try to be sensitive to as well, is for me, like, I'm 49 years old. There's like no one in the fur trade that was 49 years old, right? I think Hugh Glass would have been the oldest at around 42. And so there's a level of kind of, hey, who should I be in this so that when I am in this, I'm giving a fair and honest impression to people who are watching.
Right.
And so I've been very sensitive to that as well, too.
That's good, yeah.
So you can always be an old, cute farmer, which I think is very appropriate.
Awesome. Well, we've had a little change of setup, but hopefully you should be able to still hear us.
Yeah, all good, man.
Yeah. No, we discussed sort of your inspiration for things, and we've talked about mountain men stuff.
Yep.
We've touched on some black powders, some knives and things.
Yeah, and one more thing I will say about reenacting.
Yeah.
Is cannons are badass. And there's not a lot of opportunity you're going to have in your life to shoot a cannon.
This is true.
And it's one of those things where I've tried to like be there to be a part of that, but it's always weird to me that they need people to shoot cannons, because I feel like my whole life I've been wanting to shoot cannons.
Chasing after.
Yeah, for sure, man. So it's great.
I would assume they would have like people fist fighting over.
Right? It seems like it would, and they're so I would say that, when I go to events, I try to be whatever they need me to be, right? Like sometimes I'm a Texan, sometimes I'm a Mexican, which is actually not historically inaccurate, because Santa Anna used a lot of European generals, right? And being an older guy, like I'm, could totally fit the bill. But there's there's always an opportunity to do something like that. And maybe I take it for granted because I'm surrounded by muskets, but yeah, it's good. It's a neat opportunity. There's something that feels really different about being in a group of people all shooting muskets together
Right.
at the same time. I mean, it's pretty fantastic.
That's awesome.
Yeah, for sure.
Hell
man.
yeah. That's like the most American thing you can do.
That's what I'm talking about.
Awesome. Well, we've touched on it briefly, but I wanted to really focus in on this because I know that for both you and I and the group that we work with, this is a big thing. But like, what was the inspiration for the Green River Boys? And
Yeah.
give us just like the background on it.
No,
why
absolutely.
you wanted to start it. What it
Yes.
does.
Well, and you're integral to that, man. So that's why this is so cool, right? Because you're a very key part of the Green River Boys. So during the COVID times, there was you're a homeschool kid. My kids are all homeschooled. There was a real problem getting teachers to want to teach in person, right? And I was fully remote at work and had kind of full control of my time. And my wife reached out to me and she said, "Hey, would you consider teaching a class?" And the commitment is 1 hour a week for 10 weeks. And I talked to my boss at the time and I was like, "Hey, can I swing this? Maybe I'll do this instead of my lunch hour or whatever." And he said, "No, that's great. You should totally do that." And which is great, which is awesome. And I ended up teaching 2 classes at the homeschool co-op. One was the military history of the Texas Revolution. So basically starting with the Siege of Behar in October of 1835.
Was that the one I helped out with, or was that the second year you did it?
I think, yes. That's the one you helped out with.
Okay.
And then going all the way past San Jacinto and into the Mexican-American War. Because if you really think about Texas independence and the way that worked, it really didn't end until after the Mexican-American War. That was kind of, the final, hey, this is the border's the Rio Grande, all that kind of stuff, right? So I put together a class, and it was, 10 sessions of class, and did the same thing with I called it the westward expansion. So it was basically Lewis and Clark all the way to the end of the Homestead Act in 1890.
Yep.
So like what we think of as the West, right? And I talked about, Indian tribes and what happened. I talked about, kind of things that led up to the founding of America, Lewis and Clark expedition, the railroad, the Mormon migration, the Old West, of course the mountain men, Western fur trade, all this kind of stuff. And I'll never forget, my wife told me, she said, just remember, when you do this, you're teaching 9-year-olds. You're not arguing with someone at a museum.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow, that's good perspective, because you get like so nerded out on this stuff that it's like, okay, what's the higher level version of this? And it was fantastic, and I love doing it. And so what would happen is, I would get to the end of those sessions, and you helped me out with one of these, and I was like, hey, do you guys want to work on frontier skills? Like, instead of we could do another class on, and it was so weird how they both it was 10 class sessions, but it was kind of like 9 fit great, but then I could kind of fudge like a 10 thing. Like I want to say, for westward expansion, I talked about like American imperialism and the Spanish-American War, and I was like, it's not really to me, because I really kind of wanted to end it with the Homestead Act in 1890, because to me that kind of ended the Old West, right? And I said, what do you guys want to do? And I was like, well, hell, I could teach kids how to make a fire with flint and steel. That's fun. So I gathered up a bunch of, flints and steels and that kind of stuff, and we went outside, and Jimmy, you helped out with this, and we taught these kids how to make a fire with flint and steel. Yeah. And they really loved it, and it was really cool.
I remember some of those kids, that was their first time ever doing any sort of outdoor stuff like that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
They may have gone camping, but
it was
like, we get our propane stove.
That's right.
Our air mattresses, and here's our down sleeping bags.
That's exactly right, man. This was the first exposure for a lot of these kids to any kind of really like hardcore, wilderness skill. And I remember thinking, this is neat or whatever. And I want to say, I think I did 2 sessions of each class. I think it ended up being 2 years that I taught this.
Right.
And it was great. It was so much fun. Well, within that same time period, my neighbor, my friend Jake, who's, since become my neighbor because we forced him to buy a place down the road from us.
Held him at gunpoint.
Held him at gunpoint and said, you have to do this no matter what. And he said, man, I really want to get my son into the Scouts, but oh my gosh, they've become this like shadow of what they once were. Because if you look at like, early scouting with like, Baden Powell, DC Beard, and all these guys, these are people who are really like honestly looking at like native skills and integrating that into like a character building program. And it's shifted and changed and morphed and this and politics aside, it seemed to me like I had never even considered putting my kids in Scouts. I was like, hey, we camp, whatever, I'll teach them stuff.
I thought about doing Scouts for like, I went to one meeting or session, whatever they call it, and I was like, this is the dumbest thing I've ever been a part of. They want me to have I had to go through a thing to even carry a little pocket.
That's right. And I actually,
this is stupid.
Yep.
I'm going to do my own thing.
And I actually got busted for that, when I was a Scout. Like, I did Scouts for a few years. And I remember I'd always carry a belt knife because that's what I always carried. And, of course, it was the hollow handle survival knife, right? As any good 80s kid should have in the outdoors. And it was and I got in trouble at an event. And they're like, hey, you can't carry that. There's no knives allowed or whatever. Or no fixed blade knives allowed.
Right.
Anyway, but so Jake's talking. He's like, man, I wish there was another program that I could take my son through. I started thinking about it. And I was like, well, gosh, man, what if we just made something up?
Yep.
And I sat down, and I want to say it was like a 2-week intensive brain dump. I wrote a 50-page manual on what became the Green River Boys.
Yeah.
And it was focused on what I felt like were the 12 essential mountain man skills. And it was knife, tomahawk, archery and atlatl, starting a fire, building a shelter, first aid, wilderness survival, caching things, so they had to cache furs and stuff.
Yep.
Hunting and trapping, stalking through the wood, stalking animals, stalking and tracking, and then cooking over a fire, and first aid. And I was like, man, if a kid knew all those things, they'd be a badass, right? Because I think about myself, I never picked up a flint and steel until I was probably 23, and then my son won the flint and steel competition at a regional rendezvous at age 8. Because it's just like, what a difference, right? And like, hey, you're gonna learn this and whatever. And he was even tied up. I mean, it was like it was a hell of a thing, right? So so I put this together, and I was like, okay, well, let's put these in order of how we think somebody would need these to survive. So we started with shelter building, right? And it was a small event, and there was me and Jake and our sons, and my buddy Shane and his son, and then we did fire starting. We used flint and steel, and then we kind of built it out from there. And we did about a 2-year run where I took meticulous notes on everything we did, like what was good, what worked, what didn't work, what did the kids like, what did the kids not like. And I think we've built out a pretty good program.
Oh yeah.
And we try to do an event every month. And in fact, this year I established it as a 501(c) nonprofit.
Yeah, we're official.
We're official. We're legit, right? Yeah.
I can now put on a resume, work for this nonprofit.
Well, and that's the next step, right? Is advisory board survival instructor, and it's just such a neat thing that it's grown into that, and it's just become something that. I say it's for the kids, but my God, I get so much joy out of doing that.
Oh yeah.
And what's happened to me is I took some precepts from the AMM, like for example, one of the AMM skills. So to get into the American Mountain Men, you have to do 10 of their 20 skills, and you have to do it to prove that you can,
You're
survive off the
enough.
land and harvest an animal, with a muzzleloader or primitive something from the time period weapon. And one of their things is to camp in every season. And what I've learned from that is that we always camp, especially in Texas, on like the border, the buffers, right?
Yeah.
We don't camp when it's too cold, we don't camp when it's too hot, we tend to do spring or whatever. But man, you learn so much stuff in the cold, and you learn so much stuff in the heat that you wouldn't know otherwise. And so we've adopted the same kind of thing for the Green River Boys, where we camp. And it was kind of funny, we had a really weird weather year, so I feel like our spring camp was our cold camp, but
Yeah,
our winter camp was
kind
like
of.
warm, right? But it's one of those things where you kind of like you learn so much in doing that we've kind of kept that going through the program. And man, just my original goal, this is so funny to think about, was just to have 10 people in it. I was like, I just want 10. I don't think I can handle more than that. That way we can focus in on it. And our events usually average around 30, 30 people per
Between
event,
kids and
kids
dads
and adults
and instructors
and I think part of it too is getting everybody to get hands on and do those skills. Like we have Shane, who's a paramedic, who does first aid, and I told my wife later, I was like, man, this is like insane that you have an EMT and a paramedic teaching medical skills to kids that they could actually save a life with. I mean, and it's we're very kind of gloves off and hands on, and these are things that, not to downplay the scouts, but one of the things that I was very intentional on is, scouts have their merit badges, and like you could go, like I mentioned, my grandfather being an amateur radio guy, right?
Yep.
So you can talk on grandpa's radio and you get your radio merit badge or whatever it is, right? And so we're intentionally deep, narrow and deep, not wide and shallow.
Yeah.
So it's these 12 skills. And the idea was that the kids would keep doing those skills until they become proficient enough to teach. And once they can teach, then they've mastered that skill.
Yeah.
And I feel like us sticking to that has really created a really neat environment of kids and adults who really know these skills, who can teach them, who can do it in, we've done stuff in the rain, we've done stuff in the cold, we've done stuff in the heat. I mean, and it's just been, I don't know, it's been such a cool thing that to me, in a lot of ways, that's kind of become my primary outdoor focus. Is not like, hey, I don't want to be by myself in the woods, doing whatever. I want to be with that group doing stuff.
Right.
Because it's just been such a cool and fulfilling it's been a fulfilling example of that original camp that I was trying to get back to. And in a way, we've been able to together do this better than I ever did it back then.
Yeah.
And I remember I was talking, so tonight, 2 of my sons are camping with like 10 of their friends and no adults, right? And they're out there and they're cooking food and doing all this stuff. And I was talking to my dad, and I was like, yeah, I'm kind of bummed out that, Josiah and Jackson are camping without me now.
I'm a little jealous.
Yeah.
About this.
And my dad said, well, isn't that the point? And I was like, yeah, that is the point, right? Is we want to, sad as it is for us, right? We want to make these kids self-sufficient so that they don't need us to do that kind of stuff.
Exactly.
And their level of comfort that they have in the woods is light years beyond what I was when I was their age.
Yeah.
Just like minimalist gear, whatever the weather is, they don't care.
I watched your youngest walk out with like a sleeping bag and his pocket knife. And
yeah.
He's like, all right, cool.
Yeah, and no complaints,
Yep.
no problems, no whatever. And I feel like how when I was, I probably started really, really getting into camping when I was probably a teenager. I probably had 100 pounds of crap in my bag,
I still like, we talk about this all the time. It's like I'm always trying to pare down. I'm still like, I can't get past that like 20-pound mark.
It's hard not to, right?
Yeah.
It's just you just need that one thing, right?
I just want this one little bit of gear, even though I know I'm not going to use it. I'm happy that I have it.
That's funny. I was I wrote about that. So every once in a while, on the weekend, I'll write I call it my mini articles, right? I call it Survival Sunday, Survival Saturday, and I'll write like a short article on some kind of survival topic.
Yep.
And it's weird because I don't feel like I've done it that much. When I went back and looked, I've done this like 50 times, right? Of 50 different like mini articles or whatever. And the one I wrote about last week is exactly that topic. It's the things we bring even though we don't really need it. And I kind of equated it to almost like an Indian medicine concept. Like, you're going to bring like this foo-for-ah, doesn't have any intrinsic value, right? I can't eat it. I can't start a fire with it. I can't catch a rabbit with it.
Right.
But there's a comfort to that, and so maybe there's some value to that as well too. So
you're
giving us a pass.
There you go. Yeah, I like that. Like, I know I can do this with just the absolute bare minimum, and I've done it before.
Yep.
I like the fact that I just have that like my little candle lantern. I take with me on every camp. I don't need it.
Yeah.
And I hardly ever use it, but I just enjoy having it there.
You know, that's funny, man. It's funny you say that about the candle lantern because, you know, I still do AMM events, right? And I do pack-ins, you know, with that group and the party that I camp with. And I always bring a candle lantern. And there's always somebody who kind of gives me the business about it. You know, like, oh, man, extra weight, whatever. And I'm always like, no, man, that's the ambiance. And it is, right? It's one of those things that it's like, you know, do we need that? No.
Yeah.
But having that there kind of classes up the operation, right? It makes it a little bit cooler than if you didn't have it there.
It levels it up just that, like,
Levels it up,
one.
man. That's it.
Well,
like that.
That's what I enjoy so much about, like, outside of the fact that we get to teach these skills to these kids and we get to see them grow and learn and be proficient in a way that even some of the adults aren't.
Yeah.
I just love the fact that there's, like, this place where I can go out and I can have this mix of, like, primitive,
Yes.
ultralight, super modern gear,
Yeah.
and somewhere in between, and it's all accepted, and there's nobody like, hey, why do you have that backpack mixed with
Yes.
your primitive whatever that
Yeah.
you made, spent 3 weeks building,
Yeah. Yeah.
and like nobody's judging you, nobody's like, oh, why do you have your hollow handle survival knife?
Yeah.
We're all using full tang, fixed blades,
That's
and
right,
nonsense. Yeah, it's just
Yeah.
it's a cool place where
Dude, I like that.
you
man.
take all of that out, and it's
Yeah.
just enjoying the woods in whatever
Yeah.
way that you're most comfortable,
That's it, man.
and then you can decide like, all right, today I want to highlight this, and
Yeah.
so like sometimes I'll forgo all the sleep gear and I'll just
Yeah.
do primitive stuff for everything.
Well,
and
I
I have
think-
a place
yeah.
where I can do that.
No, man, and I think that's really part of it, right? So, like, getting that place was a tremendous blessing. And it was one of those things where, you know, mountains were moved for us to get access to that land. Because I've always been, like, I've always described myself as a world-class land mooch, right? Because I played paintball for 20 years on borrowed land. And trying to meet somebody and talk them into, like, hey, I'm going to do this thing where we're going to run out in the woods and shoot each other.
Right.
But it's cool, right? And don't worry, we won't get hurt, or don't worry, we're not going to sue you. Well, man, I really became a professional land mooch, selling the concept. Like, how can I do this? Because you need land to do that,
Yeah.
right? And my wife always jokes that, you know, because her parents lived on 50 acres, that was the whole reason why I married her, was just to get land. And I was like, well, it is kind of the oldest reason people get married, right? Is, you know, acquiring land or ending a conflict between, you know, the Danes and the Flemish or whatever it is. But it's one of those things where we knew that getting that meant that we needed that for something important that was beyond just our enjoyment, right? And so having the ability to have that permanent camp has been such a cool thing. You know, I feel like it's neat, kind of people find their little spots that they traditionally camp in.
Yep.
And like you said, you know, I've done so many events where it's cool to have a historically immersive event where you have very specific rules, right? And if everyone plays by those rules, it makes for a really neat experience.
Yeah.
And that has its time and that has its place, right? And there's some people who do that masterfully, and I'm always kind of envious of how well they put those events together. But being able to bring a bunch of people together who are there for, you know, to learn skills, good people, you know, have a mindset of strong Christian men and that whole deal, and to want to say, hey, we're going to do this thing together and bring whatever you want to try out.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like, man, how many backpacks have I tried out,
Right.
that I would not have otherwise got a chance to do, or like you said, the knives, like, hey, I'm just gonna do this knife because I want to figure out how this goes, or I'm gonna only bring, like, I think I've done, like Carlos gave me an early Program J bushcraft knife that was like a really cool blade. Like, man, that dude's so generous. And
I love Carlos.
and I was like, yeah, I'm just going to use that knife for the weekend and see how it goes. And it's like, that's kind of cool to not have, like you said, not have somebody say, oh, well, these are the parameters, or this is the event, or whatever. You know, and I think that, like, so I'll bring out some Mountain Man stuff. I'll bring out some black powder stuff. Like you said, I'll bring out some modern stuff. I'm doing a bit of hammock camping, mainly because of expediency and how warm it's been, you know, the season.
Even the summer, that's the best way to get
That's
it.
it. Oh, for sure, man. Yeah. Absolutely. But, you know, Josiah will always bring out his kukri knife. He calls that his, like, signature weapon or his ultimate. You know, he's got a great way of putting it. It's like his.
I can't remember quite what it is.
He's like paired with it, right?
Yeah.
It's his thing.
The wand chooses the wisdom.
Yeah, and that's part of the reason why I brought out a kukri is that like my dad, like growing up, that was like a mythical blade, right?
Yeah.
Really into like British military and World War I, World War II, and I mean even beyond that, right? I mean the history of that knife goes back a long history with the British Army specifically up until the 1850s, where the Nepalese Gurkhas would work with the British in India, and so very cool fighting knife that's become like my son's signature knife that he brings. Well, that's not a knife that like you said, it's like can't bring that to scouts. It's too big,
right?
Can't bring it to historical things because it's, even though it's historically accurate, nobody would have had that, in the fur trade or whatever. Yeah. And for me, like being such a gear nerd, seeing that like hybridization of all these different like styles coming together is so neat.
Yeah.
So yeah, man, I agree. I think that's super cool.
No, it's so cool to see that.
Yeah.
And I want to touch on, because it's ubiquitous throughout the whole Green River Boys thing, but it's something that I don't think we talk about enough, is just the Christian aspect of it.
Yeah.
And how important that is to everybody that's part of it.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
You want to just
for sure, man. Yeah, so definitely. So I would say that, my motivation for that specifically comes from, and this is where we're going to get a little controversial, right? Touches on what I feel is kind of a failing in the modern church of really emphasizing strong manhood, right? And I think that some of this is kind of a result of, all the changes that happened in the 60s and family dynamics. I mean, we can get into like the socio-political stuff of all of this, right? But the effect is the same, is that we have de-emphasized Christian manhood in our society, right? And I think that, just to kind of get off on a somewhat of a tangent, we as men and we as Christians, we have this admonishment to go bring the message of Christ throughout to the corners of the earth, right? The Great Commission. And I think that there is a sheepishness that has kind of crept into the modern Christian man, where it's like we don't want to be offensive, we don't want to hurt anybody's feelings, we don't want to be too bold or too whatever. And I think that, being in an environment where you can be around people where we can emphasize the opposite of that is, being a competent male, right? Being somebody who can take care of shit, right? Or my buddy Wes used to say, you need to be around people who know what the F is up, right? And that's really it, man, is you got to put people in your crew who can take care of problems.
Well, it's like what you were talking about earlier with how we need. In the 80s, that was a thing. Like, who can we survive with?
Yeah,
That
was a frequent topic of conversation
now, if not more.
Yeah, dude, my buddy Big Mike and I, he was one of the kids I grew up with. You've met him at one of the movie nights, and he and I will still be like, "Oh, do you think they could make it? Do you think they could survive?" Because that was just such a thing growing up, right?
Yeah.
It was who would make it, right? And I think that our kids we talk about this all the time at my house, and my kids all recite this. It's tough times make strong men make easy times make weak men make tough times. And we're in the weak men make tough times, right? And I feel like our children are going to inherit a world that's a lot different than the world we did, right? And it may not be them, it may be the next generation, but it's one of those things where we have an obligation to teach our kids to do what's right and to be strong in the faith and to be good examples of good Christian character. And that's not being meek, and that's not being somebody who can't take care of things, and really being someone, it's like what we were talking about on the break, right? Is like there's kind of this Christian mindset of missions being something that's away from you. Like, I'm going to go to Africa and do this. And I did mission trips when I was younger that were fantastic. I did dental work in Jamaica, went to Europe and helped build a seminary. I mean, those are neat. It's very compelling. My kids love to hear those stories. But, it's like we were talking about earlier, there's things in our community. You need to have the character to be able to say, hey, to know how to help those people who are around you, have the confidence to do that, and to have the moral backing to do that as well too. Because, some of us kind of grew up in everything's permissible, oh, they're a good guy, but without any type of moral framework, how do you make decisions when it's not a great situation, when it's a hard situation?
That was definitely the era of Christianity I grew up in.
Yeah.
Even this was 5 years ago, maybe less.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, we don't want to hurt anybody's feelings.
That's right,
it's
man.
Like everybody's got their own way of doing things, and that's okay.
Yeah. It's the many ways up the mountain, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
And I think that we are not commanded to be weak. We're not commanded to not. And again, none of this is like being mean or being ugly or whatever. Mm-hmm. But it's one of those things where, we have the admonishment to love our brothers, to help our neighbors. But if we're incapable of helping ourselves and being somebody who can help others, that doesn't do any good. Like I mentioned, I'm an EMT, right? And the first rule of EMT is the scene safe, right? If you're going to come on a situation where you're going to help somebody, you can't make yourself. And the way my EMS instructor put this, which I thought was really cool, was you can't make yourself another victim, right? You can't help someone if you're the victim. And we've created this society where we prize victimhood above everything, and that is not a society where we can help other people, right? And so we're teaching people to work in a community. We're teaching them to be strong in faith. We're teaching them to be bold and confident in what they do. And I think that that's going to help them. They may not get, stranded in the wilderness, but there's some other situations that are going to come up where that's going to help them.
Oh, yeah.
Those skills are going to help them.
It gives them the confidence to be able to make the hard decision and to do the thing when it's crunch time.
Definitely.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah. Well, we've got one more question.
Yeah.
And maybe we can talk about a little bit of the gear afterwards.
Sure thing.
But who were some of the people that inspired you in this whole thing? There's a couple guys that right off the rip I can tell you, Matt Graham, Morris Kohansky, Dave Canterbury. Those are all guys that had a huge impact on me in the bushcraft world and everything. But what were some of the guys that
Yeah, for sure, man. Well, I would say, first and foremost, my dad, right? Because he was a guy who he really valued being outside and encouraging that and not just that, but also a gear nerd, right? Kind of a proto gear nerd. I remember he had a survival kit growing up that was this kit he put together that was in a M1945 backpack, like a Korean War backpack. Ooh. That I got to do a post on that at some point because I have it. I've just taken it apart, so I got to figure out a way to recall and get everything back together. But he had this rad kit, and I thought that was the neatest thing. And the way he sold it to me was I have this kit and I can survive anything with this. And and he's got such a good attitude about life and stuff that he probably could anyway. But it was a neat thing, and that really kind of opened me up to that. And my grandfather grew up in rural Louisiana, in the Pine Woods. And I remember asking my dad, I was like, well, hey, did you learn this stuff from your dad? And he's like, oh, hell no, my dad didn't. He was ready to get out of the woods as soon as possible, right? Yeah. So he was an electronics guy and all that kind of thing. So not on that end. So I would say, unlike you, because, I grew up more in I would call it the magazine and book phase. That's where a lot of my initial inspiration came from, right? And so I remember Wilderness Way magazine, right, which was an incredible magazine that was probably just a few years off of its apex, right? This is pre-bushcraft, pre-whatever, but that's where I learned about Ron Hood, right? And so
I found I have a video DVD thing of Ron Hood that I've had for a decade at least.
Absolutely, man.
And I found it the other day going through some stuff. I was this is awesome.
So his video, Survival Camping, blew my mind because that was the first time I ever saw anyone other than me and my friends doing that stuff. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is there's other humans that do this.
Yeah.
This is the craziest thing. They're in the woods, they're trying out gear, they're working on skills, they're kind of living off the land. Guy made freaking travel donuts out of, like oil and an old tin can. I'm like, man, what could be cooler than that? Or wilderness donuts, let's call it.
Is that like that modern / primitive / whatever?
Yeah.
Whatever works.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
He didn't care.
No, and that was the thing, right? Is because the other, because I read, John and Jerry McPherson's books on like Into the Primitive and that kind of thing. And those books were very much like 100% primitive, right? And so the question that I always had is, if you're living in the woods and you're in this primitive environment and you see a bottle, well, do you use the bottle or not? Because you and I both know the bottom of that bottle can make a pretty rad arrowhead or knife, right? And it's like, well, do you ignore it because you're just primitive? And I thought, and Ron Hood was the first guy I saw that was kind of like all those things together, so that was really neat. Along the side of like, some of the early writers, one of the things that Wilderness Way had a lot of was the Society of Primitive Technology. And that's how I learned about Dave Westcott and Stephen Watts, who were doing a lot of, primitive skills kind of stuff. They actually had a book that I spent forever trying to find called Camping in the Old Style. And that book was about them camping kind of in the golden age of camping in like 1900 to 1920.
I think, don't quote me on this, I think the library in town has that book.
Oh, really? Oh, wow. Yeah.
I'm pretty sure I've gotten it before.
Yeah, it's neat. I mean, it's just but a neat kind of phase of that, right? And then, of course, for me specifically, I had, the Foxfire books were a big thing, right? Foxfire 1 talked about, that was I
don't think I know what that is.
So Foxfire, you'll love it, man. I have all these, so you're definitely welcome to borrow them. But Foxfire was like this guy. I
still have your Matt Graham book.
Oh, good. Okay.
Yes,
Well, that's funny. That's all right.
In case you were wondering where it went.
That's all right. That's all right.
Yeah.
As long as I know where it is, that's what's good. But they talked about the guys. So Foxfire was like, it was like a high school project in this high school that was in Appalachia about traditional Appalachian skills. And so they went into like, okay, how did you guys make moonshine? How did y'all, grow gardens? What were your thoughts on medicine? And it was this series of books, and Foxfire 5 talked about flintlocks and black powder stuff. And you had these guys who literally, until probably the 1940s, were still shooting black powder muzzleloaders as their predominant sustenance gun.
Really?
To hunt food for their family. And the thinking was, you could buy a tin of caps and a pound of powder, and you could hunt for a year, or you could buy bullets, which were expensive, so we're just going to use this black powder gun. So we're not talking about shooting for fun. We're not talking about like, rendezvous, cut the rope, or shoot the card in half. Just going out and shooting to live,
using
right?
It what it's for, what it's
using it for what it's for. That's why when Alvin York went into World War I, he had never shot a cartridge gun before. He'd only shot black powder muzzleloaders. Yeah. Because that was, what was available in his community. And so these guns, like they still had people in Appalachia who were still building these things, building them by hand, making the powder, and so Foxfire 5 talked a lot about that and talked about the AMM, because the AMM was actually founded, American Mountain Men was founded in 1969, and they talked about, hey, this is what we are, this is what we're trying to do. So really fascinating stuff. Once I got into Instagram, then I really that's when everything really exploded, right? Because Valley Reb, I don't know if you follow him, Mark Buell, super nice guy,
love that dude.
Great guy. Love his stuff, not only from the historical perspective, but man, that guy is a wonderful photographer.
He is just a great human being.
Yeah.
Like, I've admittedly not interacted with him a whole lot.
Yeah.
Just
super
the little
nice.
bit that I have.
Yes.
Amazing.
Yeah, super
human
nice
being.
guy. He was a huge inspiration to me. The Allegheny Frontier is another big one. He's also a guy that kind of shares my interest in like backwoodsmen and that kind of stuff. And so, I've definitely had some good conversations with him over the years. The other one I would say was Gary Doyle. I know you follow him. Yep. He's the guy. He's in the UK, and
I love that.
Super
guy
nice
too.
guy.
Again, that's what I think is so cool about this community that we have, is the fact that we have all these guys that all over the world are more than willing to share their skills, and talk with you, and like, these are guys that I've been following since I was 16 years old, and have been huge inspirations to me.
Absolutely.
in this whole
absolutely,
whole world.
man. You know, bushcraft and baseball. You know, John, I would say he's a really nice guy. Like I talked to him a lot throughout the years. Just really neat. And I think another early one for me was Fellowship Around the Fire.
Yes.
I don't know if you follow him.
Yeah.
But really kind of like getting into these guys that are these like supreme gear nerds that are like as nerdy as we are. Right? Because it's kind of like you may be the gear nerd in your group. I'm the gear nerd in my group. You meet a couple other guys. You know, we met Carlos through the internet. Always joke, you know, friends from the internet. But
he's the only one I've met in person. Well,
that's right. Well,
him and Steve.
Yeah, and Drake, right? The
Yep.
flintlock operator,
Yep.
right? So Drake's another guy. But it's things where it's like that we happen to be in the same state, happen to be in the same whatever. But it's interesting. Like you kind of, you know, like again, back to what we were saying earlier. Like love, very inspirational. But really, it's been kind of driven me lately to like really focus on the community,
Right.
Focus on who's around you, focus on the area. But yeah, I'd say all these folks have been big inspirations with regard to, you know, bushcraft, wilderness skills, and that kind of thing.
Yeah, that's awesome, man.
For sure.
I love it. Well, Kyler, we're just about to, at a good stopping point. Good time.
Did y'all talk about the gear?
Oh, do we want to talk about our gear?
Oh yeah, I mean, I guess yeah.
I totally forgot about that.
Yeah, I mean, I know we talked about the Philadelphia Derringer,
Yep.
right? So this was the first black powder pistol I ever shot. So that was super inspirational. I think I've bought like 4 of these throughout the years. I've given 2 of them away, you know, just because you end up like getting. There's a lot of that's one of the neat things about like rendezvous culture and the black powder hobby is you end up like giving away a bunch of stuff because
Right.
a bunch of people give you things, right, as you go through it. The other thing I wanted to point out was, it's kind of funny we just now started talking about this, but Bowie knives, right? I feel like who could be a Texan without a Bowie knife, right? And this knife specifically, this is what my dad built, and he's kind of funny, right? He's a perfectionist, so naturally he doesn't like anything he makes.
Obviously.
But I love this knife because I feel like this was such an iconic knife of my childhood, and this is my like 4th sheath attempt that I'm still not happy with, you
Right.
know. So it's one of those things that like I
I love
love
that perfectionist rubbed off on you.
Right. Well, I love like the way the hilt is. It's got like dog heads on it, which is like totally weird, but it also means it'll never fit right in any sheath. So you know, there's that piece. And then I brought a Colt Walker as well too, right? So this is the largest handgun Colt ever made. It was supposed to be 6 rifle shots, so 60 grains of powder for each cylinder.
Good Lord.
So a serious, and you can imagine like, you know, people back in the 1840s, 1850s, probably like $1.20 soaking wet.
Yeah.
So that was not made. I know, you know, Clint Eastwood carries those on his hip in Outlaw Josie Wales. Not made to be a hip carried gun, right? These were made to sit in pommel holsters on the side of a horse.
Right.
So a horse pistol, really, like an improvement on the horse pistol. But
Is that the sight?
that's your
the
sight,
rear
exactly
sight?
right. So when
That is so cool.
when you cock it
I've
back,
not seen
the
that.
hammer presents your rear sight.
Yeah.
And they actually there was a lot of problems that they had with these exploding in, not super common, but it was definitely a problem because this was the first pistol that they used conical bullets on. And so prior to that, everything was round, like a round
Yep.
ball. And so when the guys got these, they thought, okay, well, I could, you know, I'm just gonna put the conical down because that's the easiest way to load it.
Mm-hmm.
But then what would happen is the projectile would come out, potentially bind in the barrel,
Right.
blow up, whatever, you know, kind of a mess. But yeah, big ass pistol, super cool. Love these. I definitely spam the internet with Walker posts.
I think every other post I see.
Yeah, I mean,
that's
I love
in it.
them, right? So my goal this year is to do a hog hunt with a Walker, right? So definitely have that on the list. The other thing about Walkers that's so cool is they're the pistol from Blood Meridian. So if anyone's ever read the Cormac McCarthy book that I hope
You instantly have Kyler's attention.
that I hope to God they never make a movie about because that's going to be the worst thing ever. But yeah, Blood. This is what they're talking about. These are the Whitneyville revolvers in the scene in the courtyard where they blow away the cat. This is the pistol that they're talking about. So yeah, Walkers are badass, man. Really
That's
neat.
awesome.
Kind of really a Mexican war gun, right? So didn't come out till 1847. They used them in the Battle of Veracruz. They used them during the Mexican War. They definitely would have been on the frontier. They probably would have seen some service in the Civil War just because they would have been in stocks. People would have had them available. But really, what started American handgun culture was the Civil War, because you had millions of 1851 navies, 1860 armies, all these pistols. Build them right after the Civil War. They start developing cartridge guns, and so the true gun of the Old West, the two pistol of the Old West, would have been a cap and ball revolver, because there were so many that were surplused after the Civil War that your average farmer, like, we think of things like we have an availability of stuff because we're a consumer culture that never would have been around. Nobody had money into the 1900s. Like, it just wasn't a thing. Like, you lived somewhere, you didn't have to pay property taxes, you would farm for your food, maybe do some trading. Like, money just wasn't a thing, right? And so if somebody's going to do something like buy a gun to defend home and hearth with, they're going cheap.
As cheap
as you can get, right? And that would have been surplus Civil War stuff, because right after the Civil War, you have everybody's wandering. That's when the West really opened up, and so so cap and ball revolvers would have been really really prevalent.
That's awesome.
But fun stuff too, man, and they make a great noise when they go off.
They really do. They're so much fun to shoot.
Yeah, lots of smoke, lots of fire. Yeah. So I got a big place in my heart. Exactly right.
Yeah.
And again, the other this is the pistol that Ned Niederlander used in the end of Three Amigos, right, where he flew back and the man's gun.
I was just telling Kyler we have to watch that movie again.
So there you go. How's that for a historical reference?
That's awesome.
So Martin Short carried one in the end of Three Amigos.
Hell
so
yeah!
What could be cooler than that?
Awesome. Well, Paul, this has been fantastic.
Yeah, brother. Thank you for having me out, man.
Out here. Yeah,
I'm glad to do it, man.
So cool.
Awesome.
And where can everybody find you?
Oh yeah, so Instagram at the Orion Foundation is my handle there. I do have a website, orionfoundation.org, that's been up forever. I also have buckskinning.org, which is my mountain man site. That's been up since 2000, 2001, I think.
Older than me.
Yeah, older than you, which, man, that makes me feel old. Most everything I post through Orion Foundation, and then at Green River Boys is the Green River Boys handle. So that's a great one as well.
Yeah.
So cool, man. Thank you for having me on, brother.
Yeah,
really
dude, thank you
had a great time
so
talking.
much
Appreciate it.
So
Yeah,
cool.
for sure, man.
Hell yeah.
Awesome.
It's awesome. Alrighty. Thank you all for joining us. I hope you enjoyed it, and we'll see you all in the next one.